Morry, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And you're in the business of comedy. As a train goes past,
That'd be the Chicago train, would it be, near the studios of NBC?
exactly.
Yeah.
You've called it right. Now, Morry, you're in the business of comedy. What does that mean exactly?
Yes, it means you're loved and hated simultaneously. You give people work, but you don't give me work. Why don't you give me work? So I make a lot of friends, and then people get angry because, for whatever reason, they don't get picked for a particular thing. But yes, in the long run, all ships rise with the tide, or the tide lifts all ships. That's what I'm trying to do in comedy. I'm trying to improve the professionalism and the industry as a whole across, in particular, stand-up comedy.
So I mean that's a big answer. It's broad, but if we nail down the specifics, you're running comedy festival shows.
Yeah.
You run a school.
Yes.
Of how to teach people the next generation to become comics. Coach, yeah. So we're here.
You cut it out.
Yeah, cut it out. Yeah. So you run. So
That was an audience member.
That's an audience member. Yeah. So you're running some comedy festival shows. You also coach people in how to become comedians.
Yep, that's right.
And then also you have an app, a Gig Me app, which helps people find gigs, get paid. Also helps promoters book.
Yeah.
Comedians as well. Plus helps audiences find comedy. But we'll get to all that. Let's go first to Comedy Festival. What's happening in Comedy Festival?
Yeah, the Comedy Festival for me is a marketing tool for two of the things that you mentioned, the comedy school and the app. So I produce 3 separate shows during the Comedy Festival, but I also run 3 venues, and those 3 venues use the app, for example, Gig Me, in order to, we have probably in one show, one of the venues, we have over 14, 15 different shows performing and multiple times. So yeah, the Melbourne Comedy Festival, which I've done for the last 8 years, has always been a sort of an outlet and a conduit to the business that I do.
So now there has been Comedy Festival drama in the past where some of the big international acts kind of steal the limelight, and then the people who, and this is not a criticism, this is just what some people talk about, but the whole idea that the people who make comedy run 9 to 5, 365 days a year are often kind of the small feeders in the Comedy Festival, big international British and Americans,
yeah,
and even like the big ABC stock, Hugheses or Will Andersons, that they kind of, Peter Helliers, they kind of, they're the only ones making money. Is there any truth to that, or can anyone have a good comedy festival?
Well, actually, I don't think those particular names you mentioned do that well in the Comedy Festival because they choose not to do a lot of shows, and they're such a big name for the other 11 months of the year that they can take a break, actually.
Oh, of course.
And I know a lot of good pro comedians actually head north during the Melbourne Comedy Festival because no comedians are in the north, that being Sydney, Brisbane, and elsewhere. So they can actually get more work elsewhere during the Comedy Festival. But I understand what you're saying. You're absolutely right. The Comedy Festival, is great in that it gives everyone an opportunity. But what it has done over the last 33, 36 years, whatever it may be, has trained Melburnians and trained people who do come to the Melbourne Comedy Festival from outside of Melbourne that comedy runs for 23 days of the year. Full stop. And so, like you said, for the other roughly 11 months of the year, they don't consider going to a comedy show. They don't consider supporting comedy. And so immediately after the Melbourne Comedy Festival ends, which is typically the end of April, most of May is dead for comedians, particularly those who reside in Melbourne. They really have to get out of Melbourne and head to a different comedy venue, maybe go to Sydney for the Sydney Comedy Festival there. But if they're stuck in Melbourne for whatever reason, it is dead. So I've always been, and I've tried a number of times to sort of look at developing that 11-month window.
Yeah,
which is
it's very needed, isn't it?
I think we need government support. We need the Victorian government. We need the Melbourne City Council or similar city councils nearby the CBD of Melbourne to get involved. And maybe someone needs to build a tabernacle of comedy, somewhere that there's a dedicated comedy venue that can take the metaphorical and potentially physical torch of comedy from Susan Provan, the boss of Melbourne Comedy Festival, and ignite that for the next 11 months.
Now, another thing about comedy, Morry, you would have noticed as well, is that you tend to have, probably like football, like tennis, like any other profession, like music business, you tend to have this top of echelon of people who break through and go and have illustrious careers at the ABC or maybe radio or whatever, and they seem to what would you say? They kind of reuse the same faces often.
Yeah.
Like once you've got a track record, it becomes easier. Now, what do you say to people who are kind of like, look, you're not going to become a multimillionaire out of comedy, and in Australia, because the comedy scene being what it is, you're going to kind of make maybe a living, maybe. But when it comes to buying a new car or buying a house, or it's going to be like there has to be a love affair with comedy, right? I mean, or do you go, look, you've got a 1 in 1,000 chance, take the big swing. What's your advice to these guys?
Yeah, I think you're right. There was a window pre sort of YouTube and so on, probably the 90s, which you discussed. Not sure in this cut, but in the previous cut, you mentioned that you started comedy in the 90s. It's a different world. Like, for example, Jim Jeffries, one of the most successful Australian comedians of all time, had his own TV show in the US, tours. No one had heard of him in Melbourne because he's a Sydney comedian that went to the UK. I think Birmingham, probably obviously did London as well. And he found his voice, as they say, or he developed his skill sets overseas. Same with Ronnie Chang, for example. Ronnie did very well at Raw Comedy, didn't win it, but did very well. Was involved, I think he wrote a script for the international student, got some ABC funding, very good actor, got picked up, and the next thing you know, he's on, again, the US TV. But if you're just here in Melbourne, or Australia as a whole, it is tough, because there's no Hey Hey Saturday anymore. There's no...
Tonight Live with Steve Iser.
Tonight Live with Steve Iser. That's right. I mean, a lot of comedians, they relied on that 5-minute spot at the end of each show. Rove McManus gave a lot of voice to comedians, and fortunately that's gone. So, but YouTube's back, and YouTube came around, right? And people like Lewis Spears, for example. Again, if you don't know him, that's fine, because the great thing about the internet is you can be very niche. And Lewis Spears has millions of followers around the world, but he's been very good with his targeting of Australian, particularly Victoria and then Greater Australia. And he does tours that sell out, and he makes money from that.
So what you would say to people, in a sense, is you'd say, look, there is a tribe for you. You just have to find them. Now, it might not be the traditional route of radio, TV.
Yeah.
It might be TikTok, YouTube, the new media style. But you'd be saying to people, find your own path, basically, in a sense.
Yeah.
Find your own path.
Yeah, like absolutely. Like Ruben Solo, another Melburnian who is very wacky in his comedy, a bit like yourself, interactive with the audience, uses a lot of sound, but he's built such a great following now that he can go on the road and do tours. And probably that's the important thing for the viewers out there. It's O to O, online to offline. So you can build up your Instagram following, your TikTok following, and so on. And you might have 1 million people there, but if you can't convert that into an offline audience, and by offline I mean that these are people who buy tickets. That was beer coming out there. That are buying tickets. Then you're not going to make money in comedy.
Yeah. So buying tickets is a big one. Now let's talk a little bit. Let's segue a little bit. You've got the School of
Nothing. We have the Hard Knock Knocks Comedy School.
Okay.
Nice trick.
Now there has been copyright infringement over the name a couple of times.
Oh, it's worse than copyright infringement.
Oh, sorry, trademark.
It was trademark.
It was trademark.
I went to federal court twice.
Yeah. To argue around the name because someone else was using a similar name in a different field. And not nothing to do with laughing.
No.
But it is laughable in a way. Now, you coach people along with Brad, who's a coach.
Brad Oakes, yeah.
Brad Oakes. You're coaching the next generation of comics. Talk us through that. I mean, tell us the whole thing. Because obviously, if you've got a dream about becoming a stand-up comic, you don't have to navigate that dream on your own. You can go to Morry's
Hard Knock Knocks Comedy School.
Hard Knock Knocks Comedy School.
It's on my shirt.
Yeah, it's on your shirt. Hard Knock Knocks Comedy School. And you can learn and be thrown in with about 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 other people. Yeah. And you can all kind of jump up together as newbies and have a surf. You know, have a go.
Yeah.
Talk us through the school. How's it work? I mean, you know, it's a 5-day school, right?
It is 5 days. Although you've done it before, and you have a great joke where if a joke doesn't land, you will say to the audience, you know, it should have been 6 days.
Yeah, the school should have been 6 days.
And everyone laughs at that. That's great. No, it is only 5 days. And I'm the facilitator. So my background is formal training. I've worked in training and development for 25 years, and prior to comedy, that's what I did. I built a business in training and development. So I've come to the world of performance from a corporate sense. You know, there's 3 types of people who do our course: the keynote speakers, and that's where I came from, the bucket list tickers, and the comedians of the future. And so the keynote speaking role, you know, being able to perform, make eye contact, use volume, tone, speed, and pauses, exactly like that. These are all skill sets that cross over between stand-up and keynote speaking.
So what you're saying in a sense is, you could be a corporate guy who has to give presentations at work from time to time, go do Morry's course to work out how to liven them up and inject a bit of humour and get a bit more confidence about it.
Yeah, absolutely, and terrify the HR department.
Terrify the HR department.
But yes, but probably more so external audiences. So there's an entire market called keynote speaking out there, and interesting on that note, a comedian might earn, you know, a good comedian, like a headline comedian, might earn between $3,000 to $5,000 for a gig. Big gig, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty good money though. A keynote speaker can make easy $10,000 to $20,000 to $30,000 because they've got a skill set outside of comedy. They might have climbed the Himalayas. They might have survived domestic abuse. They might have built a business and be a household name. You add humour to that. You're adding sort of a multiple to your content.
And you've seen people of that ilk come into the school and get taught basically, okay, so basically what you'd call the guidelines or the rails of how to kind of what a gag is. I mean, that's what you teach people, right? What a gag is.
What a gag is, but also the performance of what a gag is. And so, you know, there are some people that come in off the street, you know, the Cheryls and the Bruces, and the Cheryls come in and they're like, I'm really funny after a bottle of Chardonnay in front of the girls. And, I told this funny story about me at the gym, at the Pilates. I should be a stand-up comedian. No, Cheryl, you should not. That joke only works when you've got all your girls in the room and they understand the context of that joke. Same with Bruce. Bruce, you know, turning the meat patties and the tonging the snags. Your jokes that are, you know, quite offensive to anyone outside your immediate social group won't work to an audience that doesn't know who you are. And so what we often have to do is break these people, metaphorically, and get them away from telling the truth or telling off the cuff. You know, I don't write it down, it just comes to me. Yeah, that's the problem, Bruce. You know, that's why you've got a restraining order. So that can take a little bit of time. And likewise, the keynote speakers, the people who are up there saying, well, in my third book that I wrote on climbing the Himalayas, that's also a problem because it's not interesting. And it's, you know, get to the funny faster is a mantra that what we preach.
Yeah, and, you know, Tim Smith said to us years ago, Fred and I, when we were studying comedy, Tim Smith said, you know, you want to find a convenient route to the gag. And, you know, not necessarily the fastest way, but you want to know that, you know, this leads to the gag. And it's economical. Yeah. Economical. Yeah. Now, you know, it's interesting because we talked before about the whole idea that, you know, what makes my group of laugh at the pub, you know, like on Friday night, you go with the boys, and what makes them laugh, the cheeky comment you might make, is not actually going to work on stage. So we introduced this concept in the Hard Knock Knocks school that comedy it's kind of like its own art form in a way.
Yeah.
That's right, isn't it?
I strongly believe it's an art form. In fact, that is part of the problem with stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
In the eyes of the government in Victoria and the government in Australia, they'll put millions of dollars into Sturt Street here in Victoria and Melbourne, which has opera, it has ballet orchestra, it has classic theatres. But they won't put a little small room in there for stand-up comedy. And Melbourne Comedy Festival comes along and it dominates, but there's nothing for the other 11 months of the year. That's the problem. So, and often because, there's a bit of snobbiness within the other art forms. Well, it's not really art, is it? Well, it is, absolutely. And not only is it art, it's art that actually makes money and leads to other careers directly linked to stand-up comedy, radio, TV. Rose McManus, Dave Hughes, they've all had jobs because they were first stand-up comedians.
But also, like if people are going to come out of the house, go to the local venue, have a meal, have a drink.
Sure.
That's all supporting the economy as well. And people obviously catch public transport, taxi home, Uber, whatever.
They tap on, of course.
And so it's all, it's all part of the economy. And now, okay, so I've done the school, Hard Knocks school 5 times, I think 5 times or 6 times. Now, for people who haven't done it and are sitting at home thinking, I kind of wouldn't mind having a go. I'm a bit scared, but I wouldn't mind getting up and going to the Hard Knocks school, doing comedy. I mean, I just want to try it once, but I think, my friends have said, you've got a quirky look, you should be a comic or whatever. What do you say to them? It's easy. Words are cheap. You can say, look, just have a crack. But what would you say to those people who are looking at this video, going, they're swaying, they're on the precipice of potentially, having a crack, and
death. That's it, right? I mean, you never know. It could be tonight. That's what gets me through life, right? It is literally the fact that if you don't do it now and you hold off and you put it off. It may not be you, but it may be a loved one. It may be someone who thinks so much of you. Why don't you try this? A parent, a grandparent, and that should frighten everyone to do something immediately. And
that whole idea of regret, that they would look back and go, you know what, I had this dream of doing a comedy thing. You know, I didn't necessarily want to be, Woody Allen or whatever, or Seinfeld, but I just wanted to be part of it.
I don't know if you have regret when you're dead, but yes, there's also that. There's also the it's probably even worse, when you're in the retirement village and you're going, I had a great joke, I should have done this, and
that's what I'm saying. This whole idea of that Tony Robbins got this interesting saying that discipline costs ounces, regret costs tons. So this whole idea that that people can push themselves a little bit, and that the burden is actually quite light. That's to go, and I've loved the comedy school. I've sometimes I ring up out of the blue, go, you got any vacant spots? Because I need to have that kind of. I like that kind of vibe of. I'll tell you what I like about the comedy school, is that I like the fact that I am forced to write new gags. See, as a comedian, and people, if you're interested in comedy, you'll understand this, and if you want to try comedy, you'll understand this, that sometimes you get your 5 or 7 minutes and you hang on to your routine for dear life, and it's, I've got me 5 and 7 minutes, and it's trusted, and you could hang on to it for a decade, and your standards are so high that you're not really a prolific writer, and you don't like to have B grade material. Whereas when I go to the school, Morry School, and do comedy, I'm forced to write new stuff, and that's actually the appeal of going there. And then I get to perform in front of a great audience. Tell us about the audiences that come in at the end of 5 days. So they're family, they're friends, they're supported, they're workmates, they're people that want to see you succeed. And in fact, I would say that 99% of all audiences of stand-up comedy want you to succeed. They don't want to see a train wreck. That was good timing. Train rumbling past. But they don't want to see a train wreck. But absolutely, this audience doesn't want to see a train wreck. They want to see you succeed. They want that rocket to land. They want the flag to be put on the top of the summit. We have around 50. I think we had 60 for the last group in the audience. Wow.
We're 10 graduates, do the tight 5, although to be fair, most of them went over because they planned 5 minutes and they had great laughter in between, so it became 6 minutes, 6.5 minutes, 7 minutes. What I really love, and with Brad, Brad would say the same. What I really love is at the end of the show, when the lights have gone up and the music's sort of playing and people departing, is the friends and family coming up and hugging or just saying, "Oh my God, that was amazing what you just did there. That was fantastic." And the smile and the pride and the shoulders are way back, and all these people who only 5 days ago had embarked on this journey. And that's what makes me feel proud.
Yeah, it's a very special. Now, I'm going to put the challenge out there. If anyone is thinking of doing stand-up comedy and you're not connected, well in the comedy scene with a mate or something who does comedy, or you don't know where to start, go and do the School of
Nothing. The Hard Knock Knocks Comedy School.
Hard Knock Knocks Comedy. We don't want to cover
Do not want to be sued again. That is right.
But I would strongly suggest that Morry's coaching with Brad's coaching is probably the best ride to get started stand-up comedy career. And this and ARWIN KRAZE show's all about. We're talking comedy. We talk comedy business. Now, when's the next school coming up?
The end of March. At the end of every month, we run a course.
Yeah.
So typically the last week of the month. And we just ran one in Adelaide as well. That was prior to the Adelaide Fringe Festival. We'll be back in Adelaide in June. So if you are over the border, come on down in June. And then, end of this month, March, I think it's the 23rd of March. We've got April, May, June. We've even got Jim Mullen as our guest comedian for June.
Wow, okay. So how's the March numbers looking?
Will there be space? There is definitely space at the moment. I think it's been a little bit slow. I think when I do my Facebook and Instagram advertising, I'm not normally competing against the Melbourne Comedy Festival, and so there's a lot more ads out there saying come and see me at my show.
I'll tell you something interesting. My last gig that I did at Le Monde Hotel, I bombed really badly. And I just didn't believe in any of my material, and I just kind of thought to myself, you know what, you probably need to kind of, because what happens in comedy, we're happy to talk about comedy, but what happens in comedy is that sometimes you do a gag and you kind of forget, what was it that really appealed to me about this gag and what was really funny about it, and you kind of start to go through the motions, and you can become a bit of a jukebox. Yeah, you're just a jukebox reeling off a gag. You might as well put a cassette tape in and just push play. You know what I mean? It becomes that type of thing. So I probably need to go and do the school again and just get the writing pad out with Brad and write and I write a whole new routine that it doesn't matter if it falls flat. I had one really good gig with Morry. I've had one that was kind of like a A minus, but I had one that was an A plus. And then I've had a few kind of B minus. Then I've had the fail, which was the character I did. But yeah, I highly recommend. I highly recommend doing the coaching.
Your video, I think the one where you talk about your granddad passing and charcoal chicken. I'll just say it very vaguely so the joke isn't lost, but or you don't burn the joke. That has done very well. I think we've got tens of thousands of views on the little reel, on the Instagram reel for that one.
Yeah. And it's great. Let's talk about Gig Me. Now, Gig Me is an app that is for performers, it's for promoters, it's for audience.
Yep.
Right? It's got 3 prongs to it, but it's not just comedy. It's for music, and it's basically my understanding of Gig Me, and this is why Morry will correct me. I can be a promoter and I can book acts.
Yes.
Now, I can be a comedy act and get booked by promoters and get paid straight away after the gig because the money's held in the escrow. Is that right?
That is right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And also, I can be an audience, look at Gig Me for up-and-coming gigs that are around the shop and venues. Is that right as well?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's an ecosystem for the 3 most important parts of a live performance. Like you said, but we don't use the word. We use the word organizer rather than promoter.
Okay.
Because a football club could be an organizer.
Right. Okay.
So if you're a footy club watching this and you're looking for a comedian, maybe even a musician and a comedian to do your Christmas party or your reverse draw event for the footy, then you get on Gig Me, you create an account. as an organizer. You have every live performer on there, and it's growing every day. And then you can reach out to them directly. You don't have to send an email. You don't have to try and find their Instagram details. It's there. The chat button is there. You chat with them directly. And if they're happy with the price that you offer, then you send the money through the contract system. You basically create a little agreement, a Gig Me agreement. Let's say it's $500, and you say $500, 7:30 p.m. until say 8:30 an hour. It's at this venue. It's at whatever MPG or G. Maybe it's G if there's kids and family going to be there as well. And then you have a rider. That's RIDER. Rider.
Yes.
Which is like 2 free drinks and a meal, maybe, or 3 free drinks and a meal. And then even things like accommodation is paid for by who, and transportation is paid for by who.
Right.
These are all button presses. It's the internet, it's 2025, right? So these are all just button presses, and then you press another button and it creates an agreement, and then all the organizer does is then select the live performer they want, whether it's a band, a musician, and it sends that agreement to them. The live performer, let's say it's a comedian, simply says yes. And that money, that $500, gets held in escrow. And it's held there until 15 minutes, within a window of 15 minutes after the gig is complete. And we know the gig's complete because there's an agreement, right?
Yeah.
And so as soon as that gig is finished, within 15 minutes, the money pops down into live performers' Gig Me wallet, and if they want to, they can withdraw that money immediately and start buying drinks, or they can keep it in there. But it means that they're not at the end of the night trying to find who's got the money, who do I speak to about getting paid tonight, which is very uncomfortable.
And this can be a big problem in a gig where you go to a footy club. And Dave's running the show, and Dave's had a few knocked back a few, sick, whatever. And oh mate, I didn't get to go to the bank today. You'll have to ring me Monday, and I haven't got Cheryl to sign off on it, and it's all in the account. So Gig Me kind of gets around those things. Now also, it's a good way to keep track of your gigs as well, right? And it's also a great way to book acts as well. Yeah. Now, there is an element there where if you're running a tryout room, you can run a tryout room where you don't necessarily pay acts because... What is the tryout room format? Explain it to people who don't know what comedy is. So basically...
For the millennials in the room who have no idea what a tryout room is, it's open mic, but for Generation X's like myself and boomers... It was called tryout rooms, right? It was essentially come and do a gig and see if we'll pay you in the future. And that was what it was, right? There was about 5 comedians in Australia at the time. I think you were one of them. Maybe Greg Fleet was the other. and you were probably 3 of them, to be honest. And then they would go, right, do the tryout, and then next week you'll have a paid gig, between the lucky draw and the lotto. And you got paid at that gig. But now there's so many comedians on the market that it's not tryout anymore because there's nowhere to get paid. There was, rubber chicken, RIP. But so now it's called open mic, and the open mic is really like the gym of the muscle gym of the sporting world. You're building muscles in front of other people who are doing the gym. A lot of them are comedians themselves. You're not performing to an audience. You're not swimming 100 metres in the Olympics. You're just exercising your jokes in a room. But yeah, absolutely. So I'm using too many metaphors here, but the Gig Me can be used for that type of audience as well, or that type of user, because it would be good to know who's good out there. As someone who runs events and books comedians all the time, I'm often looking at Gig Me and I'm seeing the star rating saying, great, he's got 5 stars as a performer, I'll book him.
Gig Me is a free download, isn't it? It's a free download app.
Totally free. In fact, the only time we charge anybody is when an organizer books a live performer. So if you're a football club, for example, and you want to book a comedian for your end of footy thing, then you would pay a fee to book that comedian. But that fee, it's at 10% at the moment. That fee also includes bank transfers, includes the cost of moving money, and we're holding money. We're not holding money for months, so we're not making any interest on it. And the cost of actually finding the live performer. So it comes to 10%. if you were to go out to the market and go to one of these agents or managers, I won't name them, but there's about 3 or 4 big names here in Australia. You'd be paying 25 to 30% on top of what you pay the comedian. So, yeah, this is a more it's not as expensive.
Yeah.
You're directly in communication with the comedian or live performer directly, and in my world, it helps reduce that barrier. So it just means, we don't have, the footy club doesn't have enough money to book Dave Hughes, but there's hundreds, if not thousands, of other alternatives that can be booked through GigMe.
Yeah. So now let's touch on the rubber chicken. Tell us the rubber chicken story, because I think that this is an ancient kind of almost fable of what happens when you stick your neck out, you have a go, COVID hits, all that kind of stuff, or you started, I think, during COVID. But and again, lack of support potentially from the government. Kind of potentially. Running out of runway, potentially. I remember the last few weeks of the rubber chicken, you were having this great nights upstairs.
Yep.
You were having great trivia downstairs. You were having great music night. I mean, it was really heartbreaking to see the rubber chicken close. The rubber chicken was a comedy venue, music venue, trivia venue. You could have a drink. The food was amazing.
Yep.
My wife and I would go. Tell us the story.
Yeah, so look, we took a bit of a punt. Victoria, unlike other states in Australia, had 2 blocks of lockdowns. So I came back from overseas. I was actually over in China, funny enough. Didn't cause it, but I was in Beijing during COVID. I was there for business. And my family and I came back and I decided, COVID's over now, we've been told. Let's invest everything, my life savings, into a pub, and that will become the basis and the epicenter of the comedy business that I want to create. I've already got a comedy school. I've got plans for an app called GigMe, which hadn't been built at that point, and this would be the hub. This would be the office, and we ran it for 2.5 years, and we certainly learnt a lot in that process. But we got a lot of great support. We had 3 rooms named after comedians: the Elliot Goblet room. Obviously Jack Levi, Elliot Goblet. We had the Jeff Green room called the Green Room, which is a classic double play on the Green Room reference of a studio, and Jeff Green, his surname. And then we had upstairs the Bradford Oaks room as well, or the Bradford Oaks bar. And so, it was every single day there was a comedian, a headliner performing. We ran 5 nights a week in terms of comedy. So we had 2 nights. That was a Sunday and a Wednesday was open mic, and that was the free comedy, and that was for anyone who wanted to get up and try. And it was always hosted by a professional comedian. We had Bradford Oaks and David Tolk as MCs for those 2 nights. And then the other 3, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, was paid upstairs. And like you said, with the tryouts, is we would look at the Green Room performers, and we would get 1 or 2 of them and put them upstairs in the Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Anyway, everything was going well. Unfortunately, in Victoria, possibly the rest of Australia, there isn't a lot of protection for commercial tenants. So commercial landlords have a lot more power than residential landlords do. A residential landlord can't kick you out in 14 days. A commercial landlord can. So if you owe, it's a 1956 law or something, hasn't been revised, and I don't think that there was any plague in between 1956 and COVID. And so we had debt, just like every other venue, venue or shop down in South Melbourne or anywhere in Victoria, and we were paying it back. But unfortunately, and this is my opinion, the landlords got greedy. They saw an opportunity to cut our 8-year lease. We're at 2.5 years at the time, cut that and bring in a new tenant who was willing to pay more per month, because COVID was well and truly over at that point. And they locked us out, 15 days notice, turned their phones off, turned their email, or didn't respond to their emails. VCAT had a line out the door, bigger than the MCG audience. So there was nothing we could do. They literally snuck in, changed the locks on us, and that was the end of the rubber chicken, unfortunately. And I just, having been sued twice in the federal court in that year and the year before, I just didn't have any more money to throw at lawyers and and real estate agents.
You know,
So
it's interesting.
that was it.
We've asked Morry to sponsor the ARWIN KRAZE show. he's basically saying he's broke. But anyway, we'll get to that other conversation another day. Now, the Rubber Chicken was a special venue. Okay, now if for those of you who don't know the comedy scene in Melbourne, you've got plenty of pubs and bars with comedy rooms, kind of like partitioned on, tacked on the side. You've got the Comics Lounge, which is dedicated comedy, and then you had the Rubber Chicken as pretty much the only.
There's Comedy Republic, which is in Burberry.
Actually, Comedy Republic, yeah, and the Comedy Republic is a room I've never been to. And it's kind of like potentially a pro room, It's not potentially welcoming to, necessarily to
straight white men in their middle age. That's what you wanted to say. Yeah, no, it's definitely on the left.
Carl Chandler, is that right? He runs that?
No. I think he would definitely not be running it. He's Carl Chandler is the definition of a straight white middle-aged man. No, he runs Morris House, the basement underneath. Basement comedy, but it's run by Reese Nicholson and his partner, I believe, or maybe his partner more so, and probably a team.
Yeah,
I wish them all well, and I think every comedy scene does need niches, and I think they appeal very much to a certain niche. And that niche is very big in Australia. The gay community in particular is huge, so good on them. We were appealing more to so again, the Comics Lounge, fantastic venue, holds 400 people.
Yeah.
You don't go to the Comics Lounge to catch up with your mate over a beer.
Yeah.
It's not intimate. And so the Comics Lounge is great, does very good in the big shows. When I opened the Rubber Chicken, rebranded an old pub and turned it into the Rubber Chicken. It was all about intimate comedy. It was, an audience of 110 max. There was live music as well as comedy. So you could go there, watch a show, and then enjoy food and wine in watching a band or just having it in the background. It was a different experience.
Can I say, I had an infamous musical gig at the Rubber Chicken where I couldn't tune my guitar. And it was open mic. Anyway, nightmares. And also, who was that character, Telstra character I played was also done at the Rubber Chicken. So
right. It's funny you say that because George Capaniaris, who's a very famous stand-up comedian and actor, he played... What did he play?
Yeah, I did the school that he taught.
They're good. So he got up on stage. So there was live music. There was open mic music on.
Yeah.
And he jumped up on stage and plays. He's a great guitarist and not a bad singer too.
Yeah, fantastic.
So there's a bit of crossover between comedy and music. So yeah.
Well, Morry, we're going to wrap the show up. We've hit the 40-minute mark. It's been great coming on.
It's getting hot in here too.
It's getting hot in here. We're going to go and put the aircon on. I want to thank you for coming on the show again. You've been a great guest. I want you to come back again, give us further updates, talk about how Gig Me's going, everything else. Maybe there might be a new Rubber Chicken on the somewhere down the track. Sure. Maybe even a Le Joke somewhere. You never know. You never know. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Morry Morgan. You've been listening to the ARWIN KRAZE show. We'll see you next time.